Hi everyone, Stepan here. I'm going to continue covering games from the Šolta Chess Open. In round 8 I faced a low-rated opponent, only 1200, but much stronger than that because I have been looking at his games throughout the tournament. I actually met him and I had coffee with him and his father each morning almost throughout the tournament. Great kid. I think he is 14 or 15, maybe 15. Anyway, much stronger than 1200. So I took the game seriously, as I do with every game and every opponent. I'm pretty sure he knew I was going to play the Caro-Kann. He watches my videos as he told me. And I wanted to play something different, something that I don't usually play, so that he cannot prepare in too much detail. Okay, I did play the Caro-Kann, of course. He went for the two knights, which I'd been expecting, and after d5, knight f3, I played bishop g4, which I do play usually. However, after h3, I didn't take on f3. This is the line that I've been playing all the time. Against the two knights, this was basically what I used to play. And then queen f3, e6, etc. In this game, I played bishop h5 for the first time. And bishop h5 is a very aggressive move. It leads to very complex positions in which it's not really clear who is better and why. It's also unclear who is going to be attacking first. I'll just show you the main line. So ed5, cd5, bishop b5. This is the point. By retreating this bishop, not trading the knight off, black is actually extremely weak on this diagonal, which can be reinforced by white with knight e5. Therefore, after knight c6, blocking the check, white plays pawn to g4. Now bishop to g6 is the only move, and knight e5. And after knight e5, you only have one decent way of defending, that's rook to c8. And now white continues d4. White can also continue h4 straight away. After e6, h4, this bishop is now under threat. The only way to save the position is pawn to f6, and now knight takes pawn, knight takes bishop, excuse me. H takes, queen to d3 attacking the g6 pawn, king to f7. This is all theory. Bishop takes knight, rook takes, and now there are several ways to play. The best way, in my opinion, is to go bishop d2 and castle queenside straight away, where black has to play bishop to b4 at some point before playing knight e7. And then black is attacking along the c file, white is attacking on the king side. It's obvious where black's king is. So these can get very tricky. After h3, bishop h5, my opponent did not start with ed. He went g4 first, which is fine. It can basically transpose and no real issues there. So bishop to g6 and now ed, cd. And now instead of going bishop b5, which is the most precise, he went d4 first, which is still okay. I played knight c6 in anticipation of bishop to b5. He went bishop b5. I went rook to c8, okay, and he played knight e5. Now, since my knight is already defended, I thought, well, why not play f6 before he plays h4? Why not force the trades straight away? And this is a huge mistake. I thought I knew the variation well. I thought I understood everything, and I thought that how could I have any issues in this position when my opponent had already messed up the move order? Of course, this position has been played about 200 times before, and in almost every game, black continues e6. Now here I would like to highlight the importance of analyzing your wins as well as your losses. I have to be honest and say that, okay, after the game, the evening after the game, my opponent came to the place where I was staying and we went through the game. And neither of us saw that I messed up. Neither of us actually paid any attention to it. But my mistake could have been exploited extremely, and I could have lost the game because I did not even notice what white could do. There's a reason why black plays e6 here. And of course, we do transpose to the main line if black goes e6, because white just goes h4, I go f6, he takes on g6, h takes on g6, queen to d3, king to f7, etc. We already saw this. Instead of that, I played f6 first. Now, if you know the patterns in the position, then you are aware that once this bishop is gone, there's going to be a pawn on g6, which is going to have to be defended by the king on f7, of course. And it's going to be attacked by the queen on d3. In conjunction with that, this pawn and this diagonal is very weak. Because if the king is on f7, and the pawn on d5 is only protected by the queen, that means that if the pawn is taken, the queen is going to be on d5. Therefore, the king is going to be on f7 on the same diagonal. With the queen on d3, bishop c4 simply wins the queen. Luckily for me, my opponent didn't see that. I didn't see that. He didn't see that. So the way to win this position for white, a very simple way, is knight takes bishop, h takes, queen to d3, putting pressure on the pawn. Of course, you're not going to be giving up the exchange with rook h6. So you play king f7, and I will simply knight d5. And fine, maybe the position is not completely lost, but you're a central pawn down, and this becomes very tricky to play. Of course, if you take the knight, you lose the queen, so you cannot take the knight. Well, what can you do? You can go e6, and the knight going to b4 simply loses the knight, so that doesn't work. The knight going to c3 simply loses the d4 pawn because of queen takes d4. However, knight f4, and now I don't know what to do. g6 is hanging, not only the pawn but the square, so if you go g5, queen g6 is annoying anyway. And yeah, basically black is busted here. There's nothing to do. So after knight e5, my move, my attempt to use the fact that my opponent had given me the opportunity to not enter the mainline theory could have been punished severely. So after f6, he should have just taken on g6, played queen d3, and after king f7, taken on d5, and my position collapses. Fortunately for me, he took on c6. And after bishop takes c6, black is fine. The position should be equal, but it should be much easier for black to play. And here's why. After bc, I cannot take with the rook, obviously, because there's a knight on e5. He took on g6, I took, and he played queen e2. Queen e2 is a one-move threat, which obviously I'm not going to fall for. He's threatening to play queen e6 and basically ruin my position, prevent king f7, force me to play queen d6, which loses the rook, by the way, so I would have to move the rook first or play queen d7. But if I do spot it, then queen e2 is just a bad move because I go king f7. Okay, here he went f4. Now black is definitely better because f4 doesn't do anything. If you understand the patterns, once again, you know that black wants to go e6, bishop b4, knight e7. And that way, my position is completely secure. There are no breakthroughs. In fact, black has c5 to undermine the position and just win on the c and the d file. So f4 is definitely bad. e6, and now he went g5, which after g5 black should be winning. I mean, this is too much of a time waste. And I knew that during the game after g5 it's just all over. Well, why? Because it gives up the f5 square. So once I do what I'm intending to do, knight e7, I can then go knight f5, and there's tremendous pressure on d4, e3, g3, and h4. And my knight is going to be there permanently. There's basically no way for the knight to be dislodged unless he wants to move the queen, go knight e2, knight g3. Okay, bishop b4, I'm just continuing. Bishop to e3. Again, bishop e3, this move we discussed during our analysis. It's pointless. And why would you play bishop e3 instead of bishop d2 to unpin your knight, make sure you can move your knight? Fine, you want to defend the d4 pawn, but yeah, bishop e3 is a weird move. Okay, knight e7, I'm just playing my normal moves. And now he even takes on f6, which is great, because undoubling my pawns, I mean, these are all weaknesses. And I have no weaknesses. My king is perfectly safe. I'm never going to get attacked. He's never breaking through. Here he played king d2. Castle's queenside runs into bishop takes c3 if I want to do it, but king d2. I wouldn't have taken on c3, I think. Okay, knight f5. Normal. He played rook ag1, attacking the pawn on g6, but it's going to take a ton of time to actually do something about that. I played queen c7. Queen c7 is a good move because it prepares c5, puts pressure on f4, and just connects my rooks. Rook to g4, preparing to double on g6. Now I could have played c5 straight away, but I played rook h6 first, just to make sure everything is defended. I don't have to rush things. Rook h to g1. Obviously I don't want to take on h3 because g6 is hanging, and now c5. And after c5 it's game over. There are no moves white could make which could save his position, because at the end of the rainbow the rook on g1 is hanging and they have bishop c5. So either he has to give up one of these two pieces, or he has to give up the rook on g1 or the exchange on g1. Also f4 is hanging. In many situations, also h3 is hanging, and yeah, this is over. So if he does nothing, I take and win a piece. If he plays something like queen to d2, I take twice, play bishop c5, and skewer the queen and rook. He played queen to d3, cd4, bishop d4, knight d4, queen d4, and bishop to c5, and simple win. Queen d3 I took here, took back, I took on f4, and here he resigned. It's hopeless. I mean, there is nothing. There's nothing you can do from this position. But coming back to move 9 for black, had I been playing someone better versed in the variation, I would have lost the game, regardless of their rating. This is just a pattern you have to know if you play the two knights with white. This is just something you have to be prepared for. Hopefully my opponent learned that. I have after this game. So never ever try to deviate from theory unless you're sure you're not blundering something. f6 is just... This is something... this pattern of knight g6, bishop g6, a6, queen d3, king f7, knight d5. If someone asked me during the game, how does white win from here, I would have found it. I just haven't thought about it. And this, to go unpunished when blundering like this in the opening, is double-edged. I mean, I'm sure I would have reinforced this pattern in my brain tenfold had I lost the game. Luckily for me, he didn't see it. Okay, thank you very much for watching. If you play the Caro-Kann, you have to know this. If you play the two knights, you have to know this, and hopefully you will win your games if your opponent messes up like I have. Okay, see you tomorrow with a new tournament. Stay tuned for more chess. Bye-bye.